The grand hall of the Velaran royal palace sparkled like 1,000 stars had been captured and frozen in crystal. Princess Hana stood on the raised platform, her silver gown reflecting the light from the twin suns that shone through the massive windows. She tried to keep her face neutral, but inside she felt tired and frustrated. For the past 3 hours, she had watched warrior after warrior demonstrate their abilities. Each one claimed they were the perfect choice to be her protector during the upcoming coronation tour. The tour would take her to 7 different worlds, and everyone agreed she needed protection. Hana didn't disagree with that part. What bothered her was how her 12 royal advisors kept treating her like a child who couldn't make her own decisions. A massive creature with 4 arms and skin like metal plates stepped forward. His name was impossible for Hana to pronounce, so everyone just called him the Titan breed champion. He roared and smashed his fists together, creating a sound like thunder. The advisors nodded approvingly. Chief Advisor Yuna, who sat closest to Hana, leaned over and whispered that Titan breeds were nearly indestructible. Next came a tall, thin being whose body seemed to be made of pure light. She called herself a Lumencaster and proceeded to create shields of energy and throw bolts of power that left scorch marks on the testing area. Advisor Dohyun made notes on his datapad, clearly impressed. Then there were the Mindwalkers, who could read thoughts and sense danger before it happened. One of them demonstrated by dodging invisible attacks while blindfolded. Another advisor, the young Jiho, clapped enthusiastically at this display. Hana watched them all and felt nothing. They were impressive, yes. Powerful, certainly. But something felt wrong. They all seemed so focused on showing off their strength that they barely looked at her. To them, she was just another job, another royal to guard and collect payment for. The demonstrations continued. A shapeshifter who could become anyone. A warrior who could teleport short distances. A soldier in armor that could withstand starship weapons. Each one was introduced with long speeches about their accomplishments and abilities. Hana's attention drifted to the back of the hall. There, standing quietly in the corner, was a human. He had arrived late, she remembered. His transport ship had malfunctioned, and he'd stumbled in about an hour ago, apologizing for the delay. The advisors had barely acknowledged him. The human looked ordinary compared to the others. He was maybe in his mid-30s with dark hair and a calm expression. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, a jacket, and boots. No armor, no weapons that she could see. He hadn't pushed forward to demonstrate anything. He just stood there watching everything with careful eyes. Hana found herself studying him. While everyone else watched the current demonstration, a gravity manipulator who was floating heavy objects around the room, the human was looking elsewhere. His eyes moved across the crowd, checking exits, observing the guards, noting positions. He moved his head slightly, and Hana realized he was counting something. Your Highness. Yuna's voice broke through her thoughts. The demonstrations are complete. We should retire to the council chamber to make the selection. Hana nodded and stood. As she did, the human's eyes met hers for just a moment. There was something there, not arrogance, not nervousness, just alertness. He gave her a small nod, respectful but not subservient, and then his attention returned to scanning the room. The crowd began to move, people heading toward the refreshment area or toward the exits. Hana took a step down from the platform, surrounded by her guards and advisors. Yuna was already talking about how the Titan breed would be the obvious choice, while Jiho argued for the Mindwalker's abilities. That's when everything went wrong. Hana felt rather than saw the disturbance. The air seemed to shimmer near one of the crystal pillars. Her guards didn't react. The advisors kept talking. But suddenly the human was moving. He crossed the distance in seconds, moving faster than she would have thought possible. In his hand was something he'd grabbed from the refreshment table, a knife, the kind used for cutting fruit. As he ran, he threw it with perfect accuracy at what looked like empty air. The knife hit something invisible. There was a crackling sound, and suddenly a figure appeared, stumbling. It was an assassin, dressed in a temporal cloak that bent light and time around them. The assassin had been moving in slowed time, invisible and undetectable to almost every form of security. Almost. The human reached the assassin before anyone else could react. He moved with efficiency that spoke of years of training. One strike to disable the weapon, another to off-balance the attacker, a third to pin them to the ground. The entire fight lasted less than 3 seconds. Alarms finally started blaring. Guards rushed forward, but it was already over. The human, Quan, she remembered his name was Quan, held the assassin down with one knee while his other hand checked for more weapons. His breathing was calm, controlled. He didn't look panicked or excited. He looked like this was just another day. Temporal cloak, military grade, Quan said in a clear voice as the guards took over. Someone check the assassin's right sleeve. There should be a backup weapon there. A guard checked and found exactly what Quan had said. A small poison injector, hidden and ready to use. The hall erupted in chaos. Advisors were shouting. Guards were securing the area. Medical teams were rushing in to check on everyone. Through it all, Hana stood frozen, staring at the human who had just saved her life. Yuna was at her side immediately, pulling her toward the secure exit, but Hana resisted, still watching Quan. He was talking calmly to the security chief, explaining what he'd seen and how he'd detected the threat. No bragging, no demand for recognition, just a clear professional report. How did you know? Hana heard the security chief ask. Quan shrugged. The air moved wrong. Everyone was walking naturally except for one spot, where people unconsciously shifted their path. Crowd psychology. When people sense something off, they avoid it without knowing why. I just paid attention to the pattern. As they led her away to safety, Hana made a decision. She knew who she wanted as her protector. And she knew that her advisors were going to hate it. But she was done being treated like a child. She was done with people making decisions for her. That human had done in 3 seconds what all the so-called superior warriors hadn't even noticed was happening. Tomorrow, in the council chamber, she would make her choice known. Tomorrow, everything would change. The council chamber was a circular room with 12 seats arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by one of the royal advisors. In the center stood a single chair higher than the others where Princess Hana sat. The morning light filtered through the dome above, casting everything in shades of blue and silver. Hana had barely slept. She'd spent the night reviewing security footage of the assassination attempt, watching Quan's actions over and over. Each time she saw something new. The way he'd positioned himself to have a clear path to her, how he'd assessed threats before acting, the absolute control he'd maintained even in danger. Now sitting in the council chamber, she prepared herself for the battle ahead. Chief Advisor Yuna stood first, as was tradition. She was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and silver hair that marked her age and wisdom. She'd served the royal family for 40 years and believed deeply in the old ways. Your Highness, honored advisors, Yuna began. We are here to select the protector who will guard our princess during the coronation tour. After careful consideration of yesterday's demonstrations, I present my recommendation. She activated a holographic display. The Titan breed champion appeared, rotating slowly to show his armored form from all angles. The Titan breed warrior known as Grath has served 5 royal families without a single failure. His natural armor can withstand plasma weapons. His strength allows him to physically shield the princess from any attack. His species has a lifespan of 300 years, ensuring long-term service. He is the obvious choice. Several advisors nodded. Advisor Byung, who specialized in military matters, spoke up in agreement. I support this choice. The Titan breed's defensive capabilities are unmatched. I disagree, said Advisor Jiho. He was the youngest of the 12, barely 60 years old. The Mindwalker would be superior. The ability to sense danger before it manifests is invaluable. I recommend the one called Ceres. This sparked a debate. Advisor Doyun suggested the Lumencaster instead. Advisor Yunji argued for the Shapeshifter. Back and forth they went, each presenting their candidate with lists of qualifications and abilities. Hana listened to them argue for 20 minutes. Not once did anyone mention Quan. Not once did they acknowledge that a human had been the only one to detect and stop an actual threat. Finally, she'd had enough. I have made my decision, Hana said, her voice cutting through the debate. The advisors fell silent, surprised. Usually they would argue for hours before asking for her input. I choose the human Quan as my protector. The silence that followed was absolute. 12 advisors sat frozen, mouths open, staring at her in shock. Yuna's expression went from surprise to something close to anger. Even Jiho, who was usually supportive, looked uncertain. The silence stretched for a full minute. Hana counted the seconds, keeping her face calm even though her heart pounded. Finally, Yuna found her voice. Your Highness, with respect, you cannot be serious. I am completely serious, Hana replied. Yuna stood, her composure cracking. Princess Hana, please think about this logically. Humans are a primitive species. They have no natural armor. Their lifespan is barely 80 years. They possess no psychic abilities, no energy manipulation, no advanced genetic enhancements. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They are, by every measurable standard, inadequate for this role. And yet, Hana said calmly, the human was the only one who saved my life yesterday. That was luck, Yuna countered quickly. A fortunate coincidence. He happened to be in the right place at the right time. Was it? Hana activated her own display, showing the security footage. Watch carefully. While everyone else was watching the demonstrations, Quan was watching the crowd. He observed patterns. He noticed details. When the assassin appeared, he didn't hesitate. He used what was available, a simple knife, and neutralized the threat in under 3 seconds. Where were all the superior warriors you recommended? Where were the mindwalkers who can sense danger? Where were the Titan breeds with their unmatched defense? The advisors shifted uncomfortably. On the screen, the footage played again, showing Quan's swift, efficient response. Advisor Do-hyun cleared his throat. Your Highness, I have reviewed this human's background. He has an impressive record, I admit. Former Earth Special Forces, survived the Mars siege when his entire unit was killed. He's been offered positions by 6 other royal families, which he turned down. But impressive for a human is still limited compared to other species. Why did he turn down those positions? Hana asked. Do-hyun checked his data. It says here he found the conditions incompatible with his principles. He seems to choose his assignments based on personal judgment rather than payment. So he has integrity, Hana said. Another point in his favor. Advisor Byung spoke up, his voice hard. Princess, you are letting emotion cloud your judgment. You are grateful because he helped you, but gratitude is not a basis for such an important decision. You're right, Hana agreed, surprising them. Gratitude alone isn't enough. But effectiveness is. Results are. I watched a room full of the galaxy's most powerful warriors, and not one of them noticed a threat that was designed to be undetectable. Quan noticed. Not because he has special powers, but because he pays attention, because he thinks, because he adapts. Yuna's voice grew sharp. He got lucky with one incident. What about the next threat? What about the 100 dangers he won't be able to handle because his species is simply not advanced enough? Every warrior in this galaxy has abilities that are better than humans in some way, Hana continued. But Quan has something they don't. He doesn't rely on advantages given to him by birth. He had to learn to train to think his way through problems. That makes him unpredictable. That makes him creative. And that, I believe, makes him the best choice to protect me. The advisors erupted in protest. Multiple voices talked over each other. Yuna was saying something about tradition and proper procedures. Byung was listing the dangers of the coronation tour. Unji was practically begging her to reconsider. Hana let them argue for a moment, then stood. The advisors fell silent again. I invoke the right of personal choice, she said clearly. Every advisor froze. The right of personal choice was an ancient law, rarely used. It stated that in matters of personal security, the royal heir had absolute authority to choose their own protector, regardless of advice or tradition. Once invoked, the advisors had no legal power to override the decision. Yuna's face went pale. Your Highness, that right is meant for extraordinary circumstances. It hasn't been invoked in 200 years. Yesterday, someone tried to kill me in a room full of witnesses and security, Hana said. If that's not extraordinary, what is? Please, Yuna said, and for the first time her voice sounded almost desperate. Do not do this. The other royal families will see this as weakness. They will think you cannot make proper decisions. They will question your fitness to rule. Let them question, Hana replied. I would rather be questioned for making my own choices than respected for following advice that nearly got me killed. She looked at each advisor in turn. Some looked angry. Some looked worried. Jiho looked thoughtful. Do-hyun looked resigned. The decision is made, Hana said. Quan will be my protector. This council is dismissed. As the advisors filed out, Hana remained seated, her hands gripping the armrests to hide their shaking. She'd just gone against the entire council. She'd defied tradition and centuries of protocol. She'd chosen a human, a species most of the galaxy considered primitive and weak. But as she sat there, she remembered Quan's calm eyes, his efficient movements, his lack of boasting or pride. She remembered that while everyone else had been showing off, he'd been doing his job. She'd made the right choice. Now she just had to prove it to everyone else, and she suspected that was going to be the hard part. Quan stood in the briefing room, listening to Chief Advisor Yuna explain the traditional trials that all royal protectors had to complete before officially taking the position. Her tone was polite, but Quan could hear the steel beneath it. She didn't want him here, and she was going to prove he didn't belong. "These trials have been part of our tradition for centuries," Yuna said, her hands folded behind her back. "They ensure that protectors are worthy of serving the royal family. Surely you have no objection to proving your capabilities." "No objection," Quan replied calmly. He'd expected something like this. He'd faced discrimination before, sometimes subtle, sometimes obvious. This was obvious. Behind Yuna, several other advisors watched. Advisor Byung looked stern. Advisor Unji seemed almost apologetic. Young Advisor Jiho watched with curiosity rather than hostility, which Quan appreciated. "The first trial begins in 1 hour," Yuna said. "I suggest you prepare yourself." The maze of shifting dimensions turned out to be exactly what it sounded like, a massive structure where the walls and paths changed constantly, shifting between different dimensional states. Most species with psychic abilities could sense the dimensional fluctuations and navigate successfully. Without those abilities, the maze was designed to be impossible. Quan stood at the entrance, studying the shifting walls. He could see the paths changing, hallways appearing and disappearing. Inside, the goal was simple: reach the center and retrieve a crystal marker within 1 hour. "Good luck," Advisor Jiho said quietly. Unlike the others, he seemed to mean it. Quan nodded and stepped inside. The maze was disorienting. Walls phased in and out of existence. Sounds echoed from impossible directions. The floor sometimes felt solid, sometimes felt like it was tilting. Quan could see why psychic abilities would help. They could sense the real paths versus the illusions. But Quan had learned a long time ago that when you couldn't rely on special abilities, you relied on basics. He pulled out a piece of chalk from his pocket, something he'd picked up from the supply room that morning, and marked the wall with a simple X. Then he pulled out a small bag of breadcrumbs he'd gotten from breakfast. As he walked, he dropped them periodically, marking his path. Every time a wall shifted, he marked it. Every time a path disappeared, he noted the timing. He couldn't sense the dimensions, but he could track patterns. After 15 minutes, he realized the shifts followed a sequence. They weren't random. They were predictable. Once he understood the pattern, navigation became easier. He knew which paths were stable and which would phase out. He marked the solid walls, ignored the illusions, and kept moving forward. 42 minutes after entering, he emerged at the center, retrieved the crystal marker, and walked back out. Yuna's expression was stone when he handed her the crystal. "Adequate," was all she said. The second trial was combat. Quan stood in the arena, facing a Titan breed warrior named Grath, the same one Yuna had recommended as protector. Grath was massive, easily 3 times Quan's size, with natural armor plating that covered most of his body. "The trial is simple," Yuna announced from the viewing platform. "Defeat your opponent or survive for 10 minutes. Grath grinned, showing teeth like steel. "Nothing personal, human, but you don't belong here." The bell rang and Grath charged. Quan didn't try to meet the charge head-on. That would be suicide. Instead, he moved sideways, letting Grath's momentum carry him past. The Titan breed was fast for his size, but Quan was faster. For the first 3 minutes, Quan didn't attack at all. He just dodged, studied, and observed. He watched how Grath moved, where his armor plates connected, how he balanced his weight. Every warrior had weaknesses. You just had to find them. Grath was getting frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder. That's when Quan saw it. When Grath raised his arm to strike, there was a gap in the armor at his elbow joint. Just for a second, Quan waited for the next attack, dodged under it, and struck precisely at that gap. Not hard enough to cause serious injury, but enough to make the arm go numb. Grath roared in surprise, then Quan went for the knees. The armor there was thinner because Titan breeds needed flexibility to move. Quick, precise strikes. Not powerful, just accurate. Grath stumbled, his balance compromised. Quan didn't stop. He knew he couldn't win a long fight against someone that strong. He had to end it fast. Another strike to a joint. Another to a pressure point he'd noticed on the neck. In less than a minute, Grath was on one knee, breathing hard, his body not responding the way he wanted. Quan stood behind him, ready to continue but waiting. "Do you yield?" Quan asked. Grath was silent for a moment, then nodded. "I yield." The arena was silent as Quan helped Grath to his feet. "You're a good fighter," Quan said quietly, "but you rely too much on your strength. Makes you predictable." Grath looked at him with new respect. "I underestimated you, human. I won't make that mistake again." From the viewing platform, even Yuna seemed shaken, though she quickly composed herself. "The trial is passed," she announced. The third trial was protection. They set up a dummy that represented Princess Hana in the center of a room. Then they activated a system that launched 100 different attacks simultaneously. Energy bolts, projectiles, explosives, sonic waves. The attacks came from every direction using advanced technology that made them nearly impossible to stop. "You have standard defensive equipment," Yuna explained, showing him a shield generator and an energy deflector. "Your task is to protect the target from all attacks." Quan looked at the equipment, then at the room setup. He walked the perimeter, studying the attack origins, the positions, the trajectories. The advisors watched, confused about what he was doing. Then, instead of standing by the dummy, Quan picked it up and moved it. "What are you doing?" Yuna demanded. "Changing the scenario," Quan replied. He carried the dummy to a corner of the room where the walls met at an angle. Then he positioned the defensive equipment to cover the remaining exposure. "If I can't stop all the attacks, I move the target to where fewer attacks can reach it." "That's not how the trial works," Advisor Byung protested. "You said protect the target," Quan replied. "You didn't say I had to keep it in the center of the room." Yuna's face flushed. "The purpose is to test your ability to defend against multiple threats. And I'm defending by using terrain and positioning. Isn't that what protection is about? Keeping the client safe, whatever it takes." Jiho suddenly laughed. "He's right. The trial objective is protection, not following a specific method. Besides, if this were a real situation, would we complain that he saved her life the wrong way?" Yuna looked ready to argue, but other advisors were nodding. Advisor Do-hyun pulled up the trial rules on his datapad. "The human is correct. The rules state the target must be protected, but they don't specify how or where." "Begin the trial," Yuna said through gritted teeth. The attacks launched. Energy bolts, projectiles, and explosions filled the room. But Quan had positioned everything perfectly. The walls blocked most attacks. The shield generator covered one angle. The energy deflector handled another. Quan himself stood in the final gap, using a simple physical shield to block the few attacks that got through. When the trial ended, the dummy was undamaged. Quan was breathing hard and had a few minor burns. But he was fine. "Trial passed," Advisor Do-hyun announced, almost sounding amused. That evening, Quan was summoned to meet Princess Hana. She received him in a private garden, away from the advisors and their constant watching. "You passed all 3 trials," Hana said, a small smile on her face. "I'm told Advisor Yuna is extremely unhappy about how you did it." "I didn't cheat," Quan replied. "I just didn't do things the way they expected." "That's exactly why I chose you," Hana said. "Everyone else would have approached those trials using their natural abilities. You had to think differently. You had to be creative." She studied him for a moment. "Why did you accept this position? You turned down 6 other offers from royal families. Why agree to protect me?" Quan was quiet for a moment, then answered honestly. "Because when I met you, you looked tired of people making decisions for you. I've served people who treated their protectors like tools or pets. You looked at me like I was a person. That matters." Hana's smile widened. "I think we're going to work well together." "I think so too, Your Highness. When we're alone, you can call me Hana." Quan nodded. "Then when we're alone, I'm just Quan." As he left the garden, Quan knew the real challenges were just beginning. He'd proven he could handle the trials, but now he had to prove he could protect a princess on a journey across 7 worlds. He was ready. The royal transport ship gleamed in the light of the twin suns as it prepared for departure. Princess Hana stood on the boarding platform, waving to the crowds that had gathered to see her off. Beside her, Quan stood quietly, his eyes constantly scanning the area, watching for threats. The coronation tour would take them to 7 worlds over the next month. Each world was an ally of the Velarin Empire, and each visit was carefully planned with ceremonies, meetings, and public appearances. It was tradition for the heir to complete this tour before the final coronation ceremony. "Are you ready for this?" Hana asked Quan as they boarded the ship. As ready as I can be, Quan replied. He'd spent the past week studying the 7 worlds they'd visit, memorizing layouts, understanding local threats, and coordinating with local security forces. Though I suspect your advisors are hoping I'll fail somewhere along the way. Hana sighed. Yuna still hasn't accepted your appointment. She files daily reports about the security concerns of having a human protector. Let her file reports, Quan said. I'll just do my job. The first 3 worlds went smoothly. On Serenity Station, Quan identified and stopped a pickpocket trying to get close to Hana during a public gathering. On New Terra Colony, he reorganized the security perimeter when he noticed gaps in the local guards' coverage. On Crystal Moon Base, he stayed awake for 28 hours straight during a diplomatic dinner because he'd noticed something wrong with the food testers' behavior. Each time, the local security forces were impressed. Some were offended that a human was telling them how to do their jobs. But when Quan explained his reasoning, they usually admitted he was right. By the 4th stop, even some of the traveling advisors were grudgingly acknowledging his competence. Advisor Jiho openly praised him. Advisor Do-hyun admitted that Quan's attention to detail was exceptional for any species. Only Yuna remained hostile. The 4th world was Nexus Station, a massive commercial hub where thousands of different species came to trade. It was the largest stop on the tour, with multiple events planned over 3 days. Quan had studied the security plans for weeks, and something bothered him about the whole setup. On the first day, during a parade through the main commercial district, Quan noticed something odd. The crowds were following expected patterns, cheering, waving flags, taking pictures. But there were small details that felt wrong. A vendor who kept checking his communication device instead of watching the parade. A security guard who was stationed in the wrong location according to the official plans. Groups of people who moved through the crowd in coordinated patterns as if following a script. Quan started taking notes, marking locations and faces. That evening he compiled his observations and presented them to the security chief. I think there's a problem with the security rotation, Quan explained, showing his data. These guards here, they're not on any official roster. And the crowd movements suggest organized groups rather than random citizens. The security chief, a large reptilian named Torvin, looked at the information with skepticism. You're seeing patterns that aren't there, human. Nexus Station is a busy place. Of course there are groups moving around. And as for the guards, there are thousands of security personnel here. I don't have every single one memorized. Can you at least verify their credentials? Quan pressed. I don't have time to check every person just because you have a feeling, Torvin replied dismissively. We have procedures in place. Everything is secure. Quan tried to escalate the concern to Hana, but she was in a 6-hour diplomatic meeting. He left a message with her assistant, Minji, a young Velaran woman who served as Hana's lady-in-waiting. That night, Quan couldn't sleep. His instincts were screaming that something was wrong. He reviewed his notes again and again, trying to find the pattern. The next morning, everything changed. Quan woke to find security forces outside his room. Not palace guards, local station security. They pushed into his quarters without warning. Quan, protector to Princess Hana, you are under arrest, Torvin announced. For what? Quan remained calm, but his mind was already racing through scenarios. Theft of royal artifacts. Evidence was found in your quarters during a routine security scan. Quan looked to where Torvin pointed. On his desk, which had been empty last night, sat 3 small crystal objects. They were clearly valuable, clearly Velaran design and clearly not his. I've been framed, Quan said simply. Of course you'd say that, Torvin replied. All thieves claim innocence. They took him into custody, confining him to a holding cell in the station's security center. Within an hour, the news had spread across Nexus Station. The human protector had betrayed Princess Hana's trust, stealing priceless artifacts. Some news reports suggested he'd been planning to sell them. Others claimed he was working for rival families. In the palace section of the station, Yuna called an emergency meeting of the advisors. This confirms what I've been saying all along, Yuna declared. Humans cannot be trusted. Their primitive moral standards make them unsuitable for positions of honor. I move that we immediately replace Quan with a proper protector. Shouldn't we wait to hear his defense? Jiho asked. What defense could there be? The evidence is clear, Yuna replied. Hana sat in her chair, silent. Minji stood beside her, looking worried. The advisors argued back and forth, some agreeing with Yuna, others urging caution. The evidence is too convenient, Advisor Do-hyun said thoughtfully. Kwon has been meticulous about security. Would he really be careless enough to leave stolen artifacts visible in his quarters? Criminals make mistakes, Advisor Byung countered. Perhaps he panicked. Hana finally spoke. I want to see him. Your Highness, that would be inappropriate, Yuna protested. You are the victim here. You should not be meeting with the accused. He is still my protector until proven guilty, Hana said firmly. I will see him. The holding cell was small and stark. Kwon sat calmly on the bench, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. When Hana entered, accompanied by Minji and 2 guards, he stood. Your Highness. Kwon. Hana studied his face. Did you steal those artifacts? No. Can you prove it? Not yet. But I can tell you why I was framed. Hana gestured for him to continue. Yesterday I noticed irregularities in the security setup. Wrong guards in wrong places. Coordinated crowd movements. I reported it, but no one took it seriously. Then suddenly I'm arrested. This is designed to remove me and discredit your judgment in choosing me. That's a serious accusation, Hana said. I know. But think about it. Who benefits from my removal? Who has been against my appointment from the beginning? Hana's expression grew troubled. She turned to Minji. Did Kwon leave any messages yesterday? Yes, Your Highness. He asked me to tell you about security concerns. But then the diplomatic meeting ran long, and by the time I could deliver the message, he'd already been arrested. What were his concerns? Minji pulled up her datapad and showed Hana the notes Kwon had sent. Hana read through them, her face growing darker. These are detailed observations. Specific concerns. She looked at Kwon. What do you think is really happening? I think there's a conspiracy, Kwon said. I think someone is planning something during this tour, and they needed to remove me first because I might notice. The theft charge is just a convenient excuse. Do you have any proof? Only my observations, and the fact that someone went to a lot of trouble to frame me. Hana was silent for a long moment. Then she made her decision. I believe you. The guards looked shocked. Even Minji seemed surprised. Your Highness, with respect, the evidence, one guard began. The evidence was planted, Hana said firmly. I know Kwon, he wouldn't steal. More importantly, he wouldn't be stupid enough to leave evidence in plain sight. This is a setup, and we're going to find out who's behind it. She turned to Minji. Get me everything you can find about the security arrangements for this station. Guard rotations, camera placements, access logs, everything. Your Highness, Advisor Yuna will object, Minji warned. I don't care what Yuna objects to. Do it. As Hana left, she paused at the door and looked back at Kwon. We're going to fix this. I chose you as my protector, and I trust my judgment. Thank you, Kwon said. After she left, Kwon sat back down on the bench. The situation was bad, but it wasn't hopeless. Hana believed him. That was something. Now he just had to figure out who was behind this and what they were really planning. Because his instincts told him the fake theft charge was just the beginning. Something bigger was coming, and he needed to be free to stop it. Minji worked through the night, her fingers flying across datapads as she compiled the information Hana had requested. What she found made her blood run cold. The next morning, she burst into Hana's quarters, her face pale. Your Highness, you need to see this. Hana looked up from her breakfast, immediately alert at Minji's tone. What did you find? The security cameras near Kwon's quarters were disabled for exactly 47 minutes last night. The access logs show that 3 people entered his room during that time, but their identification codes are restricted. I tried to trace them, and the system flagged my search and sent an alert to... Minji paused, looking sick. To Chief Advisor Yuna's terminal. Hana stood slowly. Yuna is involved? I don't know how deep it goes, but she has access to systems she shouldn't, and there's more. I found communication records between Yuna and several royal guards. They're planning to transfer Kwon off station today to a maximum security facility. Once he's there, he'll be beyond our reach. Where is he now? Still in the holding cell, but the transfer ships arrive in 3 hours. Hana made a decision. Get me a secure communication link. I need to contact someone who can help. Within the hour, everything was in motion. Hana had used old family connections to reach a contact who owed her a favor. A human merchant captain who operated in this sector. The plan was risky, and would make her look guilty of helping a criminal, but Hana didn't care. She trusted Kwon, and she wouldn't let him be imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. The rescue happened fast. A manufactured power outage hit the security center. In the confusion, Kwon's cell door opened. Minji had hacked the system using codes she'd stolen. Quan moved quickly, taking out 2 guards with non-lethal strikes and making his way to the evacuation point. Hana met him there, dressed in simple traveling clothes rather than royal garments. Minji was with her along with a small bag of supplies. "Your Highness, you can't come with me," Quan protested. "This will make you look guilty." "I am guilty," Hana replied. "Guilty of breaking you out. Guilty of believing you over my advisors. And I'm coming with you because whatever is happening, it's bigger than a theft charge. You said someone is planning something. We need to find out what." "She's right," Minji added. "I found more evidence. There are encrypted communications between several advisors and people on at least 3 of the remaining tour stops. Whatever this is, it involves multiple worlds." The merchant ship was small and fast, captained by a grizzled human woman named Tae Yang. She greeted Quan with a firm handshake and a grim smile. "Quan, it's been a while. Heard you were in trouble." "You could say that. Thanks for the pickup, Taeyang. You saved my crew during the Mars siege. I owe you more than a ride." She looked at Hana with curiosity. "So you're the princess who chose a human protector. Either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both," Hana admitted. They launched from Nexus Station just as alarms began blaring. The Royal Guard had discovered the escape. Within minutes, pursuit ships were following them. Taeyang's ship might have been small, but it was fast and she was an excellent pilot. She dodged through asteroid fields, used gas giant rings for cover, and eventually lost their pursuers by jumping through a dangerous shortcut that most pilots wouldn't risk. As they escaped, news feeds across the sector lit up with the story. Princess Hana had fled with the accused thief. The royal advisors declared she'd been manipulated or possibly kidnapped. Yuna appeared on broadcasts looking grave and concerned, claiming they would rescue the princess and bring the human criminal to justice. "They're making you look like a victim," Quan said, watching the news feed. "That's smart. It means people won't question why the Royal Guard is hunting for you." "Where can we go?" Hana asked. "Everywhere will be looking for us." "I know a place," Taeyang said. "A human colony called New Seoul. It's in neutral space, not part of any empire. The locals don't care much for royal politics and they protect their own." The journey took 3 days. During that time, Hana got her first real experience of life outside royal palaces. The ship was cramped and basic. They ate simple food from storage containers. They took turns sleeping in shifts. There were no servants, no ceremonies, no formalities. Hana found she didn't miss them. She spent hours talking with Quan, learning about his past. He told her about growing up on Earth, joining the military, fighting in the Mars siege. He described how his entire unit had died protecting civilian evacuees from pirates, and how he'd been the only survivor. "That's why I left Earth," Quan explained. "Everyone treated me like a hero, but I felt like a failure. I couldn't save my team. So I left and started taking private security jobs, trying to make up for it, I guess." "You can't make up for surviving," Hana said gently. "It wasn't your fault. I know that in my head. My heart takes longer to convince." Hana told him about her own struggles. About growing up under the constant watch of advisors and guards, about the pressure of being groomed for leadership while being treated like she couldn't make her own decisions. "Choosing you was the first real decision I got to make on my own," she admitted. "And everyone acted like I'd done something crazy." "Maybe you did," Quan said with a slight smile. "Look where it got you, running from your own guards hunted across space." Hana laughed, surprising herself. "You know what? I feel more alive now than I have in years." New Seoul was a bustling colony built into the side of a massive asteroid. The population was mostly human, with a mix of other species who preferred living outside major empire territories. It was loud, crowded, and chaotic, nothing like the ordered beauty of Valoran space. Taeyang had connections there, and within hours they were set up in a small apartment in the lower levels. It wasn't much, 2 rooms, basic furniture. No windows, but it was safe. While Quan and Taeyang went to gather information from the local networks, Minji stayed with Hana. The princess looked out at the crowded streets through a viewing screen, watching the chaos of everyday life. "This is how most people live," Hana said quietly, "without palaces or servants. Just working, living, dealing with problems themselves." "Does it bother you?" Minji asked. "No, I think I'm starting to understand something. All those advisors, all those traditions, they're designed to keep royals separate from regular people. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've been so protected that I don't understand the people I'm supposed to lead." When Quan returned that evening, he had news. I reached out to some old contacts. They've been monitoring communications from Valoran space. The Royal Guard has been to 3 systems looking for us. But here's the interesting part, not all the guards are following the same orders. What do you mean? Hana asked. Some of the guards loyal to your family are questioning the official story. They don't believe you'd run without a good reason. There's a split forming between guards who follow Yuna and guards who serve the royal line. That could help us, Minji said. Maybe, but there's more. I had Taeyang hack into communication records from Nexus Station. We found encrypted messages between Yuna and representatives from the other remaining tour stops. They mentioned something called the Coronation Plan. Hana felt ice in her stomach. What plan? We couldn't decrypt everything, but we got fragments. Something about removing the last obstacle and ensuring proper succession. And there's a date mentioned repeatedly, the date of your final coronation ceremony. They're planning to kill her, Minji said, her voice horrified. That's my guess, Quan confirmed. The theft charge was meant to remove me from protecting you. With me gone and discredited, they could make their move during the ceremony. Everyone would assume it was revenge from the thief, not an inside job. Hana sat down slowly. Yuna, she's behind this, but why? She served my family for 40 years. We need to find out, Quan said, and we need proof. Right now, it's just fragments and suspicion. We need something solid. Over the next week, they worked together, digging through data, reaching out to contacts, piecing together the conspiracy. Taeyang used her merchant connections to intercept communications. Minji hacked into systems she'd normally never have access to. Quan coordinated everything, his tactical mind organizing the information. And slowly a picture emerged. Yuna's family had been killed years ago during a border conflict with human colonists. It had been an accident, a tragic misunderstanding during a tense negotiation. But Yuna blamed humans entirely. She'd spent years hiding her hatred, rising in the royal court, waiting for a chance for revenge. When Hana chose a human as her protector, it triggered something in Yuna. She'd formed an alliance with a rival faction that wanted to replace Hana's family line with their own. The plan was to assassinate Hana during the coronation ceremony, blame it on the treacherous human protector, and use the tragedy to seize power while positioning themselves as protectors of Valoran interests. It's brilliant in a horrible way, Quan admitted. Kill you, blame me, and by extension all humans create a crisis of leadership and step in with a solution. We have to stop them, Hana said. We have to go back, Quan agreed. Back to the palace. But if we return now, they'll arrest us immediately. Then we need allies, Minji said. Guards loyal to the princess. Advisors who aren't part of the conspiracy. Jiho, Hana said suddenly, and Dohyun. They questioned Yuna's accusations. They might help us. It took 2 days to make secure contact with advisor Jiho. When they finally reached him through encrypt, the merchant ship docked at a small private port far from the main palace landing bays. It was 3 days before the coronation ceremony, and the palace was busy with preparations. That's what Quan was counting on. In the chaos of final arrangements, a few more people moving around wouldn't be noticed. Hana wore the clothes of a common servant, her distinctive features hidden under a hood. Quan dressed as a maintenance worker. Minji had returned 2 days earlier through official channels, claiming she'd been searching for the princess and had finally given up. Remember, Quan said as they prepared to disembark, we need to stay hidden until we have proof. Once we reveal ourselves, we'll have one chance to expose the conspiracy. I understand, Hana replied. She looked different now, not the sheltered princess from a month ago, but someone who'd faced real danger and survived. Let's finish this. Taeyang had provided them with falsified identification chips. They passed through security without incident. Just 2 more workers in a sea of people preparing the palace for the biggest ceremony in decades. Advisor Jiho had prepared a safe location for them, a storage room in the older section of the palace, rarely visited. He met them there after dark, accompanied by Advisor Dohyun. Your Highness, Jiho bowed deeply. I cannot express how relieved I am to see you safe. Thank you for trusting me, Jiho. Dohyun, I'm glad you're here too. Dohyun nodded gravely. I've been reviewing the evidence Advisor Jiho shared. The communications, the access logs, the financial records. If this is true, it's treason of the highest order. It's true, Quan said. But we need more. We need to catch them in the act. or they'll deny everything and make it our word against theirs. I may have something, Minji said, stepping forward. While I was officially searching for the princess, I had access to the ceremony preparations. I noticed something odd about the crown itself. Someone ordered modifications to the internal structure. They claimed it was for stability improvements, but the work was done by technicians Yuna personally selected. The crown is the weapon, Quan realized. That's how they'll do it. During the ceremony, when it's placed on Hana's head, we need to examine it, Do-hyun said. But it's kept in the high-security vault. Only senior advisors have access. I have access, a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone spun, weapons drawn. But it was Advisor Yoonji, one of the older advisors who'd seemed neutral during the trials. Please don't be alarmed, Yoonji said, raising her hands. Jiho told me what was happening. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I've noticed things too. Yuna has changed in recent years. Become harder, colder. I thought it was just age, but now. Can we trust you? Hana asked directly. Yoonji met her eyes. Your grandmother appointed me to the council 43 years ago. I served your mother before she passed. I serve the crown, not individual advisors. If Yuna is plotting treason, then yes, Your Highness, you can trust me. Then help us get to that crown, Quan said. That night, Yoonji used her access codes to enter the vault while the others waited nearby. She returned carrying a secured case, her face pale. You were right, she said, opening the case. The coronation crown was beautiful, a delicate structure of crystal and precious metals, designed to interface with Valoran neural patterns during the ceremony. But now, with careful examination, they could see the modifications. Small devices embedded in the crystal, connected to the neural interface. What are those? Hana asked. Do-hyun scanned them with a portable analyzer. His expression grew grim. Quantum destabilizers. When activated, they'll send a pulse directly into the wearer's brain. It would look like a sudden medical emergency. A tragic aneurysm during the coronation. By the time anyone realized it was murder, it would be too late. We have our proof, Jiho said. These devices aren't registered in any official modification records. They were added illegally. Good, Quan said. Now we set the trap. The plan was risky. They would attend the coronation ceremony as planned. Hana would approach the throne as if nothing was wrong. But the crown would be modified again, this time, to disable the destabilizers and to record everything that happened when they were activated. The moment someone tries to activate these devices, we'll have them, Do-hyun explained. The signal will be traced and the recording will show the assassination attempt. They might not activate it if they see I'm alive and well, Hana pointed out. Yuna will be suspicious if I suddenly reappear. So we don't let her see you, Quan said. We keep you hidden until the ceremony starts. By then, it'll be too late for them to change their plans. The ceremony is broadcast across all 7 worlds. They can't cancel it without raising suspicions. The next 2 days were tense. Hana remained hidden in the storage room while Jiho, Do-hyun, and Yoonji worked to modify the crown and gather more evidence. Minji moved through the palace listening to gossip, watching for any sign they'd been discovered. Quan spent the time preparing. He identified loyal guards, planned escape routes, and positioned allies in key locations. If things went wrong, they needed to be ready to fight their way out. On the morning of the coronation, the palace was magnificent. Thousands of guests from across the galaxy filled the Great Hall. Holographic displays showed the ceremony to billions watching on other worlds. It was meant to be a celebration, a new beginning for the Valoran Empire. Instead, it would be a revelation. Yuna stood near the throne, composed and dignified. She'd given several interviews over the past weeks, speaking about the tragedy of the princess being manipulated by a criminal and expressing hope for her safe return. She looked like the perfect advisor, concerned, loyal, dedicated. Beside her stood several other advisors, including 4 that Quan now knew were part of the conspiracy. They'd been identified through the communications Taiyang had intercepted. They thought they were about to see their plan succeed. The ceremony began. Music filled the hall. The guests stood as the procession started. First came the advisors, walking in formal robes. Then the guards carrying ceremonial weapons. Finally, the moment everyone was waiting for, the entrance of Princess Hana. Yuna's expression flickered for just a moment when Hana appeared, alive and well, walking down the central aisle with her head high. But she quickly composed herself. probably assuming the princess had been found and returned just in time for the ceremony. What Yuna didn't know was that Quan was there too, hidden among the guards. He wore palace armor and kept his face down, just another security officer among hundreds. He watched everything, waiting. Hana reached the throne and knelt. The ceremonial speaker began the ancient words of coronation. Hana responded with the traditional oaths. Everything proceeded exactly as it had for centuries. Then came the moment of crowning. Advisor Jiho, as the youngest council member, had the honor of carrying the crown to the throne. He lifted it carefully, moving with the slow dignity the ceremony required. Hana bowed her head. As Jiho placed the crown on Hana's head, Quan watched Yuna. For a moment, she did nothing. Then almost casually, she reached into her robe and pressed something. Alarms screamed. Not the security alarms, the alarms built into the modified crown, designed to detect assassination attempts. The crown flashed red, and holographic displays activated throughout the hall, showing the signal that had just been sent to activate the quantum destabilizers. The displays also showed where that signal came from. A direct line pointed from the crown to Yuna's position. Guards moved immediately, surrounding Yuna and the other conspirators. The ceremony ground to a halt. Guests shouted in confusion. Cameras continued broadcasting, showing everything to the billions watching. Yuna's face went from shock to rage. She looked at Hana, who still wore the crown, alive and unharmed. "You," Yuna hissed. "You should be dead." "The crown was modified," Hana said calmly, standing from the throne. "The devices you planted are disabled, but they recorded your activation signal. Everyone in the galaxy just watched you try to assassinate me." "You don't understand," Yuna said, her voice breaking. "Humans killed my family. They took everything from me. And you chose one of them to protect you. You betrayed everything we are." "I chose someone loyal and capable," Hana replied. "You chose revenge over duty." Quan stepped forward, removing his helmet. Gasps echoed through the hall as people recognized him. "Yuna," Quan said quietly. "I'm sorry for what happened to your family. But that wasn't me. That wasn't Hana. Taking revenge on innocent people doesn't bring anyone back. It just creates more pain." "You know nothing of pain," Yuna spat. "I watched my entire unit die," Quan replied. "All of them, protecting people they'd never met. I know pain, but I chose to honor them by protecting others, not by hurting the innocent." The guards took Yuna and her co-conspirators into custody. As they were led away, Yuna looked at Hana one last time. "You're making a mistake trusting them," she said. "Humans will betray you eventually." "It's their nature." "No," Hana said. "It's the nature of individuals to choose loyalty or betrayal. Species has nothing to do with it. You taught me that." As the hall slowly calmed, Jiho approached Hana. "Your Highness, the ceremony is disrupted. What would you have us do?" Hana looked at the crown in Jiho's hands, then at the thousands of guests and the billions watching. She smiled. "We finish it. The celebration after the coronation lasted 3 days. Ships from hundreds of worlds arrived at the palace, their leaders coming to pledge loyalty to the new ruler. But Hana insisted the celebration include something that had never been done before. She opened parts of the palace to common citizens. For the first time in Velaran history, ordinary people walked the crystal halls and stood in the grand chambers. Quan watched it all from his new position. He'd been formally named Royal Protector and Head of Imperial Security in a ceremony the day after the coronation. The title came with authority over all palace guards and a seat in council meetings. He was the first non-Velaran to ever hold such a position. "How does it feel?" Hana asked him as they stood on the palace balcony watching the crowds below. "Heavy," Quan admitted. "I'm responsible for the safety of an entire empire now, not just one person." "You'll be excellent at it." "You already are," Hana smiled. "Though I'll miss having you as just my protector. Now you have to protect everyone." "You'll always be my priority," Quan said. "That won't change." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching ships come and go from the landing platforms. The twin suns were setting, casting everything in shades of gold and orange. "I've been thinking," Hana said, "about what you said during the confrontation with Yuna, about choosing to honor the dead by protecting the living." "It's the only thing that makes sense to me," Quan replied. "Otherwise, the pain just spreads. I want to make that official policy. I'm establishing a new council dedicated to resolving conflicts between species peacefully." No more letting old wounds create new tragedies. That's ambitious. So was choosing a human protector, Hana said with a slight smile. How did that work out? Pretty well, I think. Inside the palace, the restructuring of the Royal Council was already underway. The 12 advisors would remain 12 in number, but the composition would change. 4 new members were being appointed, including representatives from species that had never held council. Positions before, one of those new members was a human named Sora. She was a diplomat who'd spent years working on trade agreements between human colonies and various empires. When Hana offered her the position, Sora had been stunned. Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm not sure the other advisors will accept a human on the council, Sora had said. They accepted a human as royal protector, Hana had replied. Eventually, they'll adjust. Now, as the first official meeting of the new council approached, Quan stood outside the council chamber with Sora. Nervous? He asked. Terrified, Sora admitted. How did you handle it when everyone was against you? I did my job and let the results speak for themselves. You're qualified for this position. Don't let anyone make you question that. Even Advisor Yuna? Quan paused. Yuna was still imprisoned, awaiting trial. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The assassination attempt, the conspiracy to commit treason, the illegal modifications to the crown. She would likely spend the rest of her life in confinement. But Hana had insisted on one thing. Yuna would be given the opportunity for redemption. Instead of execution, which many advisors had called for, Yuna would be assigned to community service, working to rebuild relationships between human colonies and Velaran territories. Especially Yuna, Quan said. She let her pain make her choices. Don't do the same. Choose based on what's right, not what's easy. The council meeting began with formal acknowledgments of the new members. Advisor Jiho, who'd been promoted to chief advisor in Yuna's place, led the proceedings with quiet efficiency. He was young for the position, but his loyalty during the crisis had proven his worth. Our first order of business, Jiho announced, is to address the coronation tour. Princess Hana, Her Majesty, completed only 4 of the 7 planned stops before the conspiracy forced her to flee. The remaining 3 worlds are requesting visits to complete the traditional tour. I'll go, Hana said, but I want to change how we do these tours. No more massive security operations that separate me from the people. No more ceremonies where I just wave and give speeches written by others. I want to actually meet citizens, understand their lives, hear their concerns. Several older advisors looked uncomfortable. Advisor Byung spoke carefully. Your Majesty, such an approach would present significant security challenges. Which is why we have the best security chief in the galaxy, Hana replied, nodding to Quan. What do you think? Can we make it work? Quan considered. It would require different tactics than traditional security. More flexibility, better intelligence gathering, closer coordination with local forces. But yes, it can be done. Then we'll do it. The meeting continued with discussions of trade agreements, diplomatic relations, and internal reforms. Hana had ideas for all of them, ideas that challenged centuries of tradition. Some advisors embraced the changes. Others resisted. But unlike before, Hana didn't back down. She listened to advice, considered arguments, and then made her decisions with confidence. After the meeting, Advisor Doyen approached Quan privately. I owe you an apology, Doyen said. When you first arrived, I didn't think a human could handle this position. I was wrong. You were cautious, Quan replied. That's not the same as wrong. Besides, I had to prove myself. That's fair. Still, I should have given you the benefit of the doubt. I let species bias cloud my judgment, then learn from it. That's all anyone can do. That evening, Minji found Quan reviewing security protocols in his new office. The space was larger than his old quarters, with windows overlooking the training grounds and multiple screens showing security feeds from across the palace. You look busy, Minji said. Always. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you for protecting Her Majesty, for believing in her when everyone else was trying to control her. She didn't need much protecting. She's stronger than people realize. She is now. You helped her find that strength. Minji paused, then continued. I also wanted to ask your advice. Her Majesty is promoting me to Chief of Staff. I'll be coordinating between her and the advisors, managing her schedule, Handling communications, it's a huge responsibility. You'll be great at it. You were loyal when it mattered most. You risked everything to help us during the conspiracy. That's the kind of person who should be close to the ruler. But I'm not trained for this. I was just a lady in waiting, and I was just a soldier. We all start somewhere. You learn, you adapt, you do your best. That's all anyone can ask, Minji smiled. Thank you. For everything. A week later, the trial of Yuna and her conspirators began. The proceedings were broadcast across the empire, a public display of justice. The evidence was presented methodically. The communications, the financial records, the modified crown, the activation signal. Yuna didn't deny any of it. She stood before the court and spoke clearly about her motivations. I served the crown for 40 years, she said. I was loyal. I was dedicated. But when humans killed my family, something broke inside me. I waited for justice, but none came. The incident was declared a tragic accident. No one was punished. No one even apologized. She looked directly at Hana. Then you chose one of them as your protector. In that moment, I felt betrayed by everything I'd served. If the crown wouldn't see humans as the threat they are, then the crown needed to change. I understand your pain, Hana said. She'd insisted on speaking at the trial, against the advice of several counselors. My mother died when I was young. I know what it's like to lose family. But Advisor Yuna, you let that pain turn into hatred. You plotted to kill me. Someone who never harmed you because of what others did. That's not justice. That's revenge. Perhaps, Yuna agreed. But I'm not sorry for trying to protect our people from human influence. That's why you'll never understand what you did wrong, Hana said sadly. Quan is human, yes. But he's also loyal, capable, and honorable. Those qualities don't belong to any species. They belong to individuals. You judged him without knowing him, and you judged me for seeing past species to recognize character. The court found Yuna guilty on all charges. The sentence was as Hana had requested, life imprisonment with mandatory community service working on human-Valoran relations. Many people thought it was too lenient. Others thought it was too harsh. But Hana believed in the possibility of redemption, even for those who'd tried to kill her. A month after the coronation, Quan stood in the training grounds watching new recruits run drills. He'd implemented changes to palace security, including mixed-species teams and mandatory training in multiple tactical approaches. Grath, the Titan-breed warrior who Quan had fought during his trials, approached. Security Chief, Grath greeted him formally. Just Quan is fine. What can I do for you? I wanted to apologize. When we fought, I underestimated you because you're human. I've learned better since then. No apology needed. You were testing me. That's fair. Still, I want you to know that I've applied to join your security force. If you'll have me, Quan smiled. I'd be honored to have you. We need good warriors who can admit when they're wrong. As Grath left to begin his training, Quan felt a sense of satisfaction. Things were changing. Not everyone accepted those changes easily, but they were happening. That evening, Hana called Quan to the private balcony where they'd stood on the night of the coronation. I wanted to thank you, she said.